Thank you for joining today's online travel presentation, where we talk about outstanding adventures from the Rockies to the Red Rocks in America's Southwest. My name is Lynn, and I'm pleased to be your moderator for this presentation. And today I'm joined by four special guests, Michael Como and Tracy Gerardi from Rocky Mountaineer, and Jody Blaney and Taylor Hartman from the Utah Office of Tourism. Before we begin, just a couple quick notes to take care of a little housekeeping. First of all, we're going to hold all questions until the end. So if you have questions while the presentation is ongoing, please type them in the comment box in the GoToWebinar toolbar, and we'll cover them at the end of the session. And second, I'm going to have two polling questions for you during the presentation, and we encourage you to participate. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Vacations by Rail. We are the leading rail vacations company in the United States and the trusted authority on rail, with the largest collection of vacations to destinations around the globe. The cornerstone of each of our itineraries is a rail journey aboard at least one iconic train. We're also a great rail journeys company, which means we're backed by more than 45 years of experience in the specialty of global rail tours. We're a member of the National Tour Association, American Bus Association, and we're AARP's preferred rail provider. In addition to unmatched vacations, we offer best-in-class customer care from your first call or email to your return from your trip. So when you think about experiential travel, think about a rail vacation. It's immersive from the start, and it offers a great way to get a new perspective on the region through which you're traveling. Traveling by train is an ideal way to cover long distances pretty quickly, and you can leave the navigation and the driving to someone else. And it gives you ample time to enjoy all of the changing scenery, and you're rested and refreshed and ready to explore once you arrive in your final destination. And a rail journey with Vacations by Rail offers a really distinctive and memorable experience with a well-planned itinerary packed with quality inclusions that range from that iconic rail journey I mentioned earlier to centrally located hotels and comprehensive sightseeing with really authentic experiences. So here we are. It's time for our very first polling question I told you about. So I'm going to go ahead and launch it, and it is, have you taken a vacation on Rocky Mountaineer? So we'll go ahead and keep this open for about 30 seconds to let everyone participate. Okay, it looks like everyone has cast their vote. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And Michael, you'll find this one interesting. 91% of today's attendees have not been on Rocky Mountaineer.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah, I can't wait for this group to hear more about all of the wonderful experiences that they can have on the train. So I'm going to go ahead and move this to your first slide. And everyone, this is Michael.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your interest in both Rocky Mountaineer and Vacations by Rail and the great state of Utah. So I'm going to give a little background first on Rocky Mountaineer before we start to talk about the Rockies to the Red Rocks. Rocky Mountaineer has been offering award-winning daylight-only luxury rail journeys in Western Canada for over 30 years. Actually, this is our 32nd year of operation. And in 2021, Rocky Mountaineer launched its inaugural preview season of our first two-day route in the US called Rockies to the Red Rocks. So last season, we operated kind of an abbreviated season starting right about this time last year through the end of October. Well, for 2022, we're right now in the middle of our season. We started in April and we go all the way through again through the third week of October. And this spectacular route, which covers two states, Colorado and Utah, carves its way through beautiful, diverse, and stunning scenery from red rock cliffs to gorges to the Rocky Mountains and spectacular vistas. So we're going to walk you through that experience today, talk about the rail service, the onboard service on the train, and some of the packages that we have to offer through Vacations by Rail. So this is a map which shows where we cover on this particular route, as well as some of the areas we cover on the packages that are available to you through Vacations by Rail. You can see here on the map, the route travels between Denver, Colorado, and Moab, Utah. And that white diamond in the middle there is Glenwood Springs. So I mentioned earlier, we are a daylight rail experience. So our guests don't overnight and sleep on the train. We actually stay in a local hotel in Glenwood Springs. We include meals on board the train. We include drinks as well as alcoholic beverages are included on board the train. And you're traveling in these spectacular rail cars that we've customized. You're on the train between Denver and Glenwood Springs for about 8 hours, and then Glenwood Springs to Moab for roughly about 5 hours or so. And the train goes in both directions, east and westbound. So we have packages that'll accommodate both directions. As you can see there, there's a dotted line between Salt Lake City and Las Vegas, which are two major hubs to get in and out of the destination. There is an airport in Moab that offers flights, a couple of flights a day, connecting Salt Lake City and Denver. But a lot of guests will book a package where they can do sightseeing, experience the national parks through southern Utah, and fly and then come into Vegas or out of Vegas or Salt Lake City. So we'll talk about some of the different packages later in the presentation. I want to start with some of the destinations and the key hubs. First, we have Denver. Again, Denver is like one of these up and coming American cities that's growing in popularity. It's kind of an area that's surrounded by natural beauty, and it's a growing city with regard to its population and its modern technology. You have a kind of a mix of old world architecture with some modern architecture. The city, believe it or not, a lot of folks don't know this, but Denver has 300 days of sunshine a year, a great cultural scene, really unique neighborhoods. And this picture here, this slide shows Larimer Square, which is Denver's urban shopping and dining district. It's like an outdoor mall, if you will, with Victorian buildings, has some beautiful restaurants to eat outside, and some boutique shops as well to enjoy. Now, the overnight city where we stay, or overnight resort town, I should say, is Glenwood Springs. So when the train arrives, your luggage has already been taken care of for you, by the way. So your luggage will be delivered right to your hotel. We have a transfer from the train station to one of 3 different hotels that Rocky Mountaineer works with in Glenwood Springs. And Glenwood Springs is a very quaint resort city in the heart of Colorado. It's known for its hot springs. It sits sort of nestled in the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by the vast White River National Forest. So we do an overnight there. Guests can relax, enjoy a light dinner in town, go out for a drink, take a stroll, and then we board the train the next day, either on our way to Moab or to Denver, depending on which direction we go. And then we have Moab, which is the sort of the heart of where some of the most beautiful national parks are in America. Arches National Park, Canyonlands, as well as a beautiful spot called Dead Horse Point. So in Moab, you're only minutes away from these parks, and the town itself is really quaint, a lot of fun restaurants, great shopping. My friend Jody will tell you more about the great little town of Moab when she presents about Utah. So this is a little slide that shows you some of the highlights of the route itself. 60% of the journey travels along the Colorado River. And I mentioned earlier the diverse nature of the sightseeing experience on this route. We have great red rock canyons like Ruby Canyon. You've got pine forest canyons like El Dorado, and you've got the spectacular Book Cliffs, which is 100 miles of cliffs that are made of sandstone and rock formations, and it looks like stacked books. That's why they call it the Book Cliffs. So let's talk about some more of the highlights of the route. And I'm going to talk about the route as if we were going from Denver to Moab, but the route from Moab to Denver is just as beautiful. Quite honestly, I actually enjoy going from Moab to Denver because you're sort of building up into the mountains and ascending into the Rockies, if you will. This shot here is the Moffat Tunnel, and we go over 24 tunnels, I should say through 24 tunnels on this route between Denver and Glenwood Springs. But the Moffat Tunnel is the most famous. It was the largest railroad tunnel in the Western Hemisphere, at 6.2 miles. It was built in 1928, and it is quite a marvel, carved through the mountains there. And you can see that image is stunning because of the aspen trees in September, mid-September to early October, where the fall foliage starts to kick in. Those aspen trees turn to this beautiful golden yellow colors patched throughout the mountain ranges here in Colorado. This is one of my favorite shots here of Byers Canyon, which is an 8-mile stretch between Sulphur Springs and Kremling, Colorado. It has some of the most dramatic rock formations stretching from the Colorado River up to these ragged peaks. So this is a great spot here, and you can't see this image from the highway or driving. You really have to take the train in order to capture this spectacular scenery. Another great canyon, this is called Red Creek Canyon. So you follow the Colorado River once again along this journey. As you get towards Glenwood Springs, you start to see these red rocks formations, and the pine forests start to dissipate a little bit, and you start to see the rock formations build as you come into Glenwood Springs. Then we overnight in Glenwood Springs, as I mentioned earlier. Charming little town, cute little train station right there, and you're actually walking distance to a couple of the hotels, but we will provide a transfer for our guests who don't want to make the short walk to the hotel. And again, we're overnighting here in this cute little town. Very popular place. A lot of folks really enjoy Glenwood Springs. The next morning, we'll board the train again, and we'll serve breakfast on the train, making our way towards Utah. And as we travel, we start again to see more of these spectacular red rocks. This one here is Ruby Canyon, obviously named for the ruby red colors. It's about a 25-mile stretch along the Colorado River. This canyon is only accessible by seeing it via train, or if you were taking a rafting journey along the Colorado River. There's no other way to see this spectacular, beautiful canyon. Then the scenery gets a little more arid, and you start to see these almost moon-like landscapes as we travel along the Book Cliffs. As I mentioned earlier, parts of this journey, you start to see the Book Cliffs. It looks like stacked books at the top. And the highest peak here is Mount Garfield, which we'll see along the journey. Just really dramatic scenery, very unique and very diverse scenery going from Denver to Moab. And then when the train arrives in Moab, we're only a short distance from our train platform to the center of Moab, where our hotels are located. So you'll have a transfer included. The train will pull in, and the coaches will be waiting for our guests to bring them into the center of town for transfer. So it's seamless travel. We want to make it as easy as we can for our guests, and worry-free, because that's the way travel should be these days. I want to talk about the actual onboard experience now in the train cars themselves. And I know if you're a Vacations by Rail client, or if you are yearning to be one, I'm sure you're interested in trains. So these are our custom designed single level coaches that we operate on this route. As you can see, they have large picture windows. So there's a lot of glass to get immersed in that scenery. And our hosts on board the train, we typically will have 2 hosts providing drink and commentary, which we call storytelling, because really it's more about not just the history, but learning about the destination, but hearing stories about what's happened with over 100 years of rail history in the region. And then onboard staff is going to provide your meal service as well. So whether it's a breakfast or lunch or an early dinner on one of our directions, you'll have these delicious hot meals delivered right at your seat. As you can see, here's an exterior image of the Silverleaf train. This is a shot taken in Canada, but you can see how big those glass windows are. The spectacular viewing, it's like watching the scenery through a large screen TV, if you will, but you're really there in the scenery. And our hosts, we take great pride in the fact that our train hosts provide that service with a smile. As I mentioned earlier, all the beverages and the meals are included, and that includes non-alcoholic as well as alcoholic beverages. So we're offering on this route some regional wine, some craft beer, as well as spirits and other beverages as well for your enjoyment. And then when it's time for meals, we'll typically have a choice of 2 entrees for a lunch or dinner, with a starter like a salad or an appetizer and a dessert. And for breakfast, we'll always have a couple of choices for a hot breakfast. If you're looking for something on the light side, sometimes we'll have like a yogurt and granola parfait, for example, if you're looking to be a little more on the health conscious side. And we always recommend that if you have any dietary needs, please contact your Vacations by Rail agent when you're making the booking. They'll be able to put that in the system, so we have access to that information. So whether it's gluten-free or other dietary requests or needs, we want to be aware of that ahead of time so we can make sure your journey and your experience are what you're expecting and make it as pleasurable as possible for you. So those guests who want maybe an upgraded experience, we've designed a package called Silverleaf Plus. And what Rocky Mountaineer has done is we've brought down from Canada 2 of our lounge cars. So we have a classic style lounge car with that sort of mid-century look with the wood finish and bar. And then we have a more modern version with black leather chairs. These lounge cars seat about 50 guests, and we attach them to the Silverleaf seated dome car itself. So when you purchase Silverleaf Plus upgrade, you have access to the lounge cars, and you can go in there and enjoy some light snacks as well as some bit of a expanded beverage menu. We have some signature cocktails available, as well as wine and beer and other beverages available through inside the lounge itself, as well as an additional host on board the train. So you've got that extra space to enjoy, relax, stretch out, and kind of move around on board the train. Here's a little, I think this little video might run for us here. Here we go, kind of goes slowly here, taking us through a virtual walk, if you will, from the back of the lounge car up to the bar. And while you're walking to the bar, you can decide what you'd like to order from our lovely bartender there. So there's a look at inside the more, I would say that the more classic style rail car, lounge car. So to talk about a couple of packages that we have available, just want to talk to you about some of the more popular ones, if you will, but we have a dozen different packages, and Vacations by Rail can make arrangements for any of those packages. But I want to mention that Vacations by Rail also has some of their own itineraries that include the train. So I think what we have here is something for everybody. For those guests who want more of an independent package where they're, when they get to Moab, they can choose to curate their own experiences, whether it's to go hiking, to go Jeep touring, or to take a river rafting experience. We've got these packages that are a little bit more independent. So this one is called Rockies to the Red Rocks Excursion with Salt Lake City. And what it features is, if we were starting from Denver, it would include 1 night in Denver, of course, the train to Glenwood Springs with the overnight hotel. And when we get to Moab, you have 2 nights in Moab. And in Moab, you can choose during your free time to do any type of experiences. And I'll tell you about what you have available to you or have access to in Moab. Rocky Mountaineer offers, when you book with Vacations by Rail, we recommend that if you'd like to see Arches National Park, we highly recommend that you book a package with us that includes the Arches National Park tour the same day that you arrive in Moab, which would be early afternoon. We'd have a coach waiting for you and take you out to Arches National Park for a guided tour, which is a must-see if you're out there. So that can be booked as an add-on to this package. And then we provide a transfer by motor coach to Salt Lake City with 1 night at the end. Another package to talk about here is a little bit more detailed package if you want to have a little bit more touring included and see some of the national parks in southern Utah that Jody's going to talk about in a few moments. This one's called Rockies to the Red Rocks at Leisure with Las Vegas. So this one does 2 nights in Denver, 1 night in Glenwood Springs, 2 nights in Moab, and then you're met by a local company there that will take you on a coach tour with a driver guide. We'll take you to Capitol Reef National Park. We'll overnight in Bryce Canyon, so you'll visit Bryce Canyon National Park, and then you'll stop and visit Zion National Park for a tour there, and then make your way to Las Vegas for 2 nights. And I have to mention this again, these tours go both eastbound and westbound. So you can start in Las Vegas if you wish, do some sightseeing and explore Vegas, some of the shows and gambling, and then take your journey with the guided coach to Moab and then take the train to Denver. So both directions can be booked through Vacations by Rail. Another great package for those guests who want more rail time, and I brought this one into this presentation because it features 4 days on the train. So you would start in Denver with one night. You would take the train to Glenwood Springs, and you'd spend 3 nights in Moab. We have time to experience the national parks in that area. And then you'd hop on the train back from Moab to Denver at the end and spend one more night in Denver. So it does a big round trip. So for those who want to just fly in and out of one city, like fly in and out of Denver, you can do that with this package here. I mentioned earlier how you can add excursions. We have this company called Moab Adventure Center. So when you book with Vacations by Rail and you receive your booking information, we'll send you a link that provides you the access to a website where you can book some excursions here, whether it's hiking, off-road adventures, different tours in the area, rafting trips, Jeep rentals. They have all kinds of options for you depending on what type of experience you want to have when you're in Moab. We also have some packages that include an amazing flight seeing experience. So when I showed you the slide earlier of that journey from Moab to Salt Lake City by motor coach, you could add on there, if you want to not take the motor coach, the flight seeing. It's about an hour and a half flight seeing where the plane will travel over some of the national parks en route to Salt Lake City. We also have packages that include this flight seeing from Moab to Las Vegas as well, which is really the way to go in terms of transportation, because if you were to drive or take a motor coach straight from Moab to Las Vegas, it's quite a long day. So we've added this to some of the packages for 2024. So I want to thank you for your time and attention and turn it back over to Lynn, who's going to talk about one of the great packages that Vacations by Rail has to offer in the destination.
Thanks, Michael. And those are wonderful independent vacations. They cover the best of the destinations and really highlight Rocky Mountaineer. And if you're interested in something that's fully escorted, featuring Rocky Mountaineer's latest route, you don't have to look much further than Vacations by Rail's first class Colorado Rail adventure, because it does feature Rocky Mountaineer. It includes some sightseeing in Colorado, as well as stays in Utah and some of those famous national parks. So this tour begins and ends in Denver, and in between, we travel the destinations throughout Colorado and Utah by train and deluxe motor coach. We enjoy time in Colorado Springs to gaze upon Garden of the Gods, which is a UNESCO natural landmark. And it has the 300-foot towering red rocks. We climbed to the top of Pikes Peak aboard the Manitou and Pikes Peak Cog Railway. And from here, we make our way to Canyon City to ride the Royal Gorge Route Railroad. And then we do a little bit of time in southern Colorado for another train ride aboard the Cumbre and Toltec Scenic Railroad. Durango is a town created by the railway, and its beloved Durango and Silverton narrow gauge railroad is also on the itinerary before we cross the Colorado and Utah border and on to Moab. And our time here is really highlighted by a visit to Arches National Park, a place so spectacular that you have to really see it to understand its grandeur. And I know Jody is going to talk a little bit about Arches National Park in just a little bit. But really then we're building up to the pinnacle of the tour, which is, as we step aboard the luxurious daylight only Rocky Mountaineer that Michael just told us about, and you get to watch that scenery change from the red rocks of Utah to the hues of the Rocky Mountains and wind up back in Denver where we started. So just a little teaser here for an escorted version of some of these great itineraries along this route. So now I'm really happy to turn things over to the Utah experts, the Utah Office of Tourism. So Jody and Taylor, take it away.
Hi, I'm Jody. I'm with the Utah Office of Tourism. I'm on the international team, so I work with a lot of international visitors, but we work with a lot of domestic visitors as well. And I'm here with Taylor, who is our tour specialist, and he knows Utah inside and out. So he's a great person to have here with me for backup, and if you have any questions at the end.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Jody. Thanks for the introduction. Good to be here.
So here's a little bit about Moab. Moab is one of the most popular, charming towns in the whole state of Utah. When you're in Moab, you can do, all of the outdoorsy things. You can book things through the Moab Adventure Center, like mountain biking, guided hikes, some climbing, rafting. All of those can be booked through the Moab Adventure Center, or you can book that as part of your Vacations by Rail package. If you don't want to do as many outdoor things, or if you just want to have a night off, Moab is a great little town to walk around. There are some great shops, local shops that feature Native American art and jewelry. There are rock shops. Everybody loves rock shops. And there are some really cool locally owned restaurants. One of my favorites is a breakfast restaurant. So if you go to Moab, this one's only open for breakfast. It's called Love Muffin. And, you know, I would go there just for the name, and you can buy a t-shirt that says Love Muffin. But there's also the Moab Brewery, which is really popular. And then there is the Sunset Grill, which is kind of a fancier restaurant in Moab that is inside an old mansion. They have redone it and made it into a fine dining restaurant. And then another thing to see near Moab is the Moab Giants. I know that everybody's into dinosaurs right now with all of the Jurassic Park movies coming out, and everybody seems to love dinosaurs any day. So just outside of Moab is the Moab Giants Dinosaur Museum. And there's an indoor museum, and then outside they have full-size dinosaurs that you can walk around and look at. Okay, now moving on to Arches National Park. This is, you know, an iconic scene here in Utah. This is Delicate Arch. This is just one of the arches that's at Arches National Park. There are actually 2,000 arches to be explored when you're in Arches. One thing that you need to know about Arches is we have started a new timed entry system for entering the park. We did this because people were spending a lot of time, like hours, waiting in line just to get into the park when they could be spending that time, you know, exploring other areas, doing other things. And so in order to enter Arches National Park, you have to have a timed entry ticket. These tickets can be purchased 3 months in advance, or they can be purchased the day before. They release a couple of tickets the day before to get into the park. But if you book your excursion through Vacations by Rail, like Michael suggested, you know, that van will be there waiting for you in Moab to take you to Arches, and you don't need to worry about the timed entry system. If you do want to book a ticket on your own and go on your own little adventure, the tickets can be booked on recreation.gov, and they are $2. Let's see. Oh, also with the timed entry system, you do not need a ticket if you go before 6 o'clock a.m. or after 5 o'clock p.m., which is kind of a neat thing because the sunrises and the sunsets in Arches are spectacular. So that's something you might want to consider as well. This is another one of our national parks, Canyonlands National Park. This is the largest national park in Utah. And it has lots of different things to do. There are moderate hikes, there are hard hikes. It consists of 3 different regions, so different kinds of scenery. One of the most popular is the Needles District, which is beautiful and just has some nice moderate hikes where you can go and experience the scenery and not be too wore out. Also in Canyonlands National Park is one of the West's most photographed sites. It's called Mesa Arch. So if you go to Canyonlands, make your way to Mesa Arch and get your, you know, iconic picture while you're there. There's also a scenic drive to the bottom of Dead Horse Point. This is a 1 to 2 hour drive where you can see petroglyphs and arches, and you can see the Green River, and it has spectacular, spectacular views. Oh, here's a picture of the Needles District. You can see the unique rock formations that we have. You know, all of our different parks have such unique landscapes. So that's just a picture of something. That's the Needles District. This is a hike that you can take while you're there. Dead Horse Point State Park. This is in Canyonlands. This is in the Islands in the Sky district. This is 2,000 feet. This is an elevation of 2,000 feet or 609 meters with spectacular views of Moab, the LaSalle Mountains, and the Colorado River. So you can go to Dead Horse Point, you can visit the Visitor Center and buy Native American art. They have a gallery, there are exhibits on the geology of the area and how all of these neat rock formations were formed. Capitol Reef National Park. I love this picture. I actually have this picture hanging on my wall at home. Capitol Reef is just such a special place. And of course, Capitol Reef has amazing views and opportunities for hiking and biking. They have slot canyons, you know, all the beautiful things you'd want to do at a national park, including Petroglyphs. One thing in Capitol Reef is they have petroglyphs. They have an abandoned Mormon outpost that you can go and explore. And there's an unearthed Fremont Indian village that you can explore as well. And then one thing I like to mention when talking about Capitol Reef is the area surrounding Capitol Reef. There's a little town just at the entrance of Capitol Reef called Fruita. And in the summer and fall, you can go into Fruita and pick your own fruit. And they have peaches, pears, apples, and plums. You can go pick those from the trees in Fruita, and then you pay by the pound, and then you have some fresh fruit to take with you when you're exploring Capitol Reef National Park. A neat little town that's just 8 miles away from the entrance to Capitol Reef is Torrey. This is a great place to go. Torrey has a lot of great little restaurants and shops, and Torrey is a internationally recognized dark sky community, which I will tell you a little bit more about later. I really like this picture. I wanted to show you a picture of Green River State Park. This is a little bit outside of Canyonlands in Green River. There's Green River State Park and there's Goblin Valley State Park. These are in Emery County. When you go to these parks, you have easy access to the Green River. There are picnic areas. There's golf, there's disc golf, and there's amazing fishing on the Green River. So these are state parks. And I would recommend going there. Goblin Valley especially has such unique scenery. It looks like you're on Mars. And actually the movie Galaxy Quest with Tim Allen was filmed there, just like it was another planet. So that's definitely something to see when you are in Utah, just a short drive from Moab. Another thing in Emery County are all of the petroglyphs and all of the Native American history. So a lot of these petroglyph panels are really easily accessible from the road. Some of them are a short hike, but they are worth seeing. They're pristine, they've been well taken care of, and they're just amazing to see. Another thing in Emery County is the San Rafael Swell, which is a beautiful area to visit. It's known as the Little Grand Canyon that has, you know, spectacular views, slot canyons, and even dinosaur bones. This is Helper City. This is one of my favorite little cities in the whole state. This is an old railroad town, which I think that your guests would appreciate. Helper got its name because of the helper trains that were there. Trains would be coming up the mountain and they couldn't quite make it to the top. And so in Helper, they have these little trains that would push the big trains up the mountain. So it was, you know, a thriving railroad city back in the day. And over the past couple of years, you know, there's not as much railroad business, of course, but it has been totally revitalized. It was a railroad city. It still has the railroad history, the railroad museum, but now it's also an art city. It has lots of different galleries and really cool shops where you can buy art in the city. They've redone a lot of the buildings back to their original charm. And this is a little coffee shop called Happiness Within that you definitely need to go to when you are in Helper. There's Balanced Rock Cafe, which everybody loves. You go in there and you get an Anasazi melt and you look up at the balanced rock that you can see on the horizon. And then another thing that Helper is famous for are their cinnamon rolls. So make sure you stop by Marcia's Cafe to get a famous cinnamon roll. Helper isn't really, you can spend the night there, but it's more of a stopover, you know, explore the city for a few hours and then, you know, go on to your destination. This is Bryce Canyon National Park, and this is one of the most unique places on Earth, I think. The rock formations that you see are called hoodoos, and you can take hikes down into Bryce Canyon. You can see the hoodoos. There are all types of guided tours, including you can go on a hike with a llama, and the llama will carry all of your things. So Bryce Canyon is beautiful. It's a great place for photography and hiking. And Bryce Canyon is also an internationally recognized dark sky park. So a great place to be at night, out with the hoodoos, looking up at the stars. Zion National Park is our most popular national park. It was actually the second most visited national park in all of the United States in 2021. And Zion has something for everybody. It has, you know, of course, you know, spectacular hikes and biking. Lots of people like to rent e-bikes and drive, you know, up the paved road through the canyon. There's a scenic drive that you can take around Zion. One neat thing that Zion has done, they brought in an expert a couple of years ago to find out what they could do, you know, to improve the visitor experience in Zion. So in Zion and in Springdale, the city that's just outside the entrance, they've actually buried all of the power lines. So people love to go to Zion and take pictures, of course, and now they can take a picture without having a power line in the picture. So that's kind of a fun thing that they do. Zion is also a great place for bird watching and wildlife viewing. It really has something for everybody. This is one thing that Zion has. This is Angel's Landing. This is an epic hike that's on a lot of people's bucket list. I did want to tell you about the reservation system that there is for Angel's Landing. Actually, it's more of a permit system. So this is a famous hike, and you can hike almost all the way up to the top where you see this view to a place called Scouts Landing, and you don't need a permit to do that. Anybody can do that. But there is this top section called Angel's Landing. It's just a very short section at the end that you do need a permit for, and there'll be rangers there checking. And, you know, this is not to prevent people from going to Angel's Landing. This is just to prevent, you know, too many people being up there at once, you know, because it could be dangerous. So just know we're not trying to prevent people from going to Angel's Landing. We're just trying to make it a little bit safer. And if you do want to apply for a permit, then that can be done through recreation.gov. But again, you can hike up most of the way to Scouts Overlook without a permit. This is the Narrows at Zion National Park. I know that Taylor has been hiking the Narrows quite a bit lately, but the Narrows, there are 1,000-foot tall walls that you can walk through. You can see this picture. It doesn't even look real. A lot of the pictures of Zion don't even look real. You do have to get your feet wet, so you'll want to rent some gear from a local outfitter to go hike the Narrows. You can make this an all-day trip. You can just go in for a little while and come back. So this is an amazing, you know, bucket list thing to do for a lot of people that visit the national parks. If you don't want to do the actual hike in the Narrows, you can do a walk. There's a hike that's on paved trails. It's called the Riverside Walk that will take you almost up to the entrance of the Narrows. So that's a good option for people who don't want to get their feet wet. This is another slot canyon. Utah, we're kind of famous for our slot canyons. This is in Kanab, which is a city a little bit farther south kind of down in the Four Corners area. Kanab is just such a neat little community with lots of these, really special hikes that a lot of people don't know about. So if your guests are going to rent a car, Kanab is a great place to go to experience these slot canyon hikes that you can make as easy or as hard as you want. Kanab, like I said, is just such a neat little community. One thing it's famous for is being known as Little Hollywood. So many of the Western movies back in the day were filmed in Kanab. There's a hotel there called the Perry Lodge where all the movie stars used to stay. And Frank Sinatra stayed there one time and he said, you know what this place needs is a pool. And so he built a pool. So you can go swim at the pool at the Perry Lodge that Frank Sinatra built. And there's a movie history museum also in Kanab. And a lot of these structures are still there. You can go and see. And season 2 of Westworld was also filmed in Kanab. So just a charming town to go visit, lots of neat local restaurants and shops. This is Valley of the Gods in San Juan County, which is a little bit farther south from Moab, but definitely worth the visit. So Valley of the, sure I get everything right. So I have taken a tour of Valley of the Gods. It was by a Native American guide, which made it really special. We got in a van and the Native American guide told us stories about the area, the legends of the rock formations, everything to do with the area. And then we went on a ride up the Moki Dugway up to Muley Point. It's kind of a scary ride, lots of switchbacks, but it's definitely worth it because when you get to the top at Muley Point, you can actually see 4 states. You have an amazing view of the area, and it's definitely worth the ride. So we recommend San Juan County for lots of great views and Native American experiences. This is Salt Lake City, our capital city. I know Michael mentioned this, in some of his slides, that some of the excursions go up to Salt Lake City, or you can arrive in Salt Lake City and take the drive down to Moab. Salt Lake City is our capital city. As you can see, we are right in the mountains, which is pretty special. This is downtown Salt Lake City. Some people don't realize, how cool Salt Lake City is. We have so many great local restaurants and brew pubs and entertainment options in Salt Lake City. We have the arts and culture. We have, the symphony and the ballet and the opera, and we have a world-class theater called the Eccles Theater where traveling Broadway shows come. One thing you can do as far as the breweries in Salt Lake is you can buy a brewery pass through Visit Salt Lake that gives you access to 12 different bars and pubs throughout Salt Lake City, and you get a $5 credit at each one. So you can either buy a drink, you can buy food, you can buy a mug, whatever you want. But it's just kind of a neat way to explore Salt Lake City, and see all of the various brew pubs that we have to offer. This is the Natural History Museum of Utah. I bring this up because this does have the best views of Salt Lake City. As you can see, the whole structure is kind of built into the mountains, just east of Salt Lake City. It's kind of camouflaged there. The museum itself is spectacular, with exhibits that go, all the way from the prehistoric days with the dinosaurs and Native American history and lots of stuff about geology and the early settlers of Utah. And the view there is spectacular. The Natural History Museum is part of the Connect Pass, which can be purchased through Visit Salt Lake, which features access to several different attractions in Salt Lake City. The Natural History Museum, a couple of other museums in Salt Lake, the zoo. You could go do a tram ride at Snowbird. So all different kinds of activities are featured with this Connect Pass. So if you're going to be in Salt Lake City for 1 or more days, I would recommend the Connect Pass. This is something that I wanted to bring up because I assume that a lot of your customers are into trains. This is the Golden Spike National Historic Site, and this is Promontory in Promontory, Utah, which is about an hour and 20 minutes north of Salt Lake City. This is where the Transcontinental Railroad was built. The Central Pacific and the Union Pacific trains came together in 1869 and joined the two rails to form the Transcontinental Railroad. There is a golden spike there, and they have these reenactment. You can see all these reenactors here. They do this every Saturday in the summer, twice a day. You can go and watch the reenactment. And there are 2 driving tours of this Golden Spike area and 1 walking tour. So if you are really into trains, this is a really fun place to go visit. So I've mentioned a few times about the Dark Sky Parks. The Dark Sky program is an international program that was formed that is based on light pollution in an area. So some of the communities in Utah, like Helper and Torrey, are dark sky communities. They have, really limited their light pollution. They have responsible lighting. They've really made an effort to preserve the dark skies in their area. All of our national parks are dark sky parks, and there are some neat experiences that you can do. There are ranger-led experiences at all of the national parks. And then in Kanab, for example, there's a really neat experience where you can go out into a field that is full of cattle, big Texas Longhorns. You could go out there with a guide, and there's a big bonfire, and you can make s'mores, hang out with the Texas Longhorns, and tell stories. There's an astronomy-led tour. There's a Native American tour. And then when the fire goes out, you just lay on the ground and appreciate the beautiful stars that can be seen so well there in the area. So I do want to briefly touch on an initiative that we have in place through the Utah Office of Tourism. It is called Forever Mighty. This is our sustainable tourism program. And this isn't just about, recycling and leave no trace, which are included. Of course, we want people to be respectful of where they're traveling. But this also involves supporting local communities, supporting local guides, respecting, the pioneer heritage and the Native American heritage that we have in Utah. So this is something that we are emphasizing in all of our cities. And I will include this in the email that we send out, but it's our responsible tourism message that we're pretty proud of here in Utah. And that is the end of my presentation, and will be available for questions and answers at the end.
Thank you so much, Jody. We learned so much about all of Utah's great destinations and activities. I know I'm putting this on the top of my list for where to go next, because who knew it was so wonderful? I mean, it's just amazing. So now it's time for our next polling question, and it is about Utah, and it is, which Utah natural wonder are you most excited to see? So there are, unfortunately, I only had 5 choices for you. So your choices are Arches National Park, Dead Horse Point State Park, Canyonlands National Park, Capitol Reef National Park, and Green River State Park. So we have some that are really well known and some that I just learned about today, but all of them were amazing. So of these 5, we'll keep this open for another 10 seconds to give everyone a chance to participate. Okay, well, let's go ahead and close the poll. Jody, it probably doesn't surprise you. Arches National Park is at the top of the list with 52%, but Canyonlands is right behind it at 24%. And then, there are definitely people who are interested in Green River with that amazing natural structure on that image. It was really outstanding.
Yeah, that's great. We do love arches. We have Delicate Arch on our license plate, but we do have, so many great places to visit around the state. So I hope you can come visit them all.
Absolutely. So if you'd like to learn more about rail vacations on Rocky Mountaineer, as well as our itineraries to Utah's mighty national parks and stunning sights, you can request one of our brochures by calling 877-929-7245 or visit vacationsbyrail.com. And we have some limited time offers on some vacations featuring Rocky Mountaineer. Michael, can you tell us about these promotions?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Lynn. So we have a few different promotions happening right now. One for the 2022 season. I'll talk about the 2023 season. So if you're, as we're in the midpoint of our season, we still have a few months left, and we do have space available still on the train this season. We have a $200 per couple offer available on any 2022 booking. That includes just purchasing the 2-day rail. So if you book the 2-day rail package and you design the package or book your own hotels in Denver and Moab, we can still provide this this offer. And it does expire though on July 29th, so you have about 10 days left to take advantage of this particular offer. And then for 2023, for next season, we have an all aboard offer, which is our first offer of the season. It's definitely our most alluring offer in terms of a per couple savings. So it's a saving of $800 per couple. Applies to 2023 qualifying packages, including, again, 2-day rail. And it says 3-day rail journeys. That would apply to our Canada product because we do have a 3-day rail experience in Canada. Now, this offer does expire August 31st. So you have a little more time, but not a lot. You have about, say, 6-7 more weeks left for this particular offer for 2023. Oops, I think I went too fast, Lynn. I have to go back one.
There you go.
All right, thanks so much. So we also have a travel again offer, and this applies to both 2022 and 2023. So if anybody has traveled with us previously, and I know most of you haven't experienced Rocky Mountaineer yet, based on the poll earlier today, but if you have traveled with us and you book again in 2023, we'll offer an additional $400 off per couple, and that's on top of the current offers that I just mentioned before. So they can be combined together. This offer ends the end of next year. So if you decide to travel last minute, if you travel with us this year and you book one of these packages and then you want to travel next year, perhaps on our Canadian routes, this offer would apply for your future travel booking. So thanks so much for staying on board with us today for this presentation. And I want to thank our fellow panelists and hosts for inviting us today.
Wonderful. Well, to make a reservation, you can call Vacations by Rail at 877-929-7245. You can also book online at vacationsbyrail.com. And whether you book online or you give us a call, you will be assigned a rail specialist who will assist you from your first call or online order until you return from your trip. So now is the Q&A portion of our session, which is, we have some really good questions. So let me go ahead and pull them up. So let's see here. The first question is, where does the train stop in Moab? I didn't know it had a train station.
Oh, that is a great question. There really is not a train station in Moab per se, but we have set up a platform area, which is about 15-20 minutes outside of downtown. And again, that location we've arranged so if motor coaches or vans can pick up and deliver our guests. And when you purchase a package with Rocky Mountaineer through Vacations by Rail for the season and 2023 as well, we'll include transfers so you'll be able to get to and from the train seamlessly.
Wonderful. The next question is, when is the best time to travel to Utah to see all of these sites? Jody and
The-
Taylor, that would be a great one for you guys.
Taylor's not
I
been here.
think the best time is in the early summertime and then in the late summertime. So around fall is good. I think it gets pretty warm in July and August, so people like to avoid those times. If you're looking for less crowds, the time to go is kind of in the shoulder seasons. October or April are really great times to visit.
All right, wonderful. Let's see. Are these programs appropriate for seniors and or single seniors?
I guess I could answer that question if you'd like, Lynn.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have single rates, and a lot of the packages that we have are really catered to any, in terms of interests and activity level, if you will. So I mentioned, and I know, Lynn, you mentioned your tour package that does kind of a circle trip through
Yep.
Colorado with many train experiences where you have your own guide and driver. So that's, if you want a package that's going to include a lot of the hotels, transportation, sightseeing already built into the package. Vacations by Rail has those. Rocky Mountaineer has a couple like that. But if you want something more independent, we have those packages where you can kind of customize your own experience once you get to the destinations like Moab and Denver. So yeah, we have something for everybody.
Great. Michael or Tracy, what are COVID protocols on the train?
I think I'll have Tracy answer that question for us. If she could.
Hi, yeah, thanks. It's my pleasure to answer that. So with Rocky Mountaineer, whether it is our Canadian routes or our US route, the Rockies to the Red Rocks, we always adhere to the federal, state, or provincial guidelines that are in place. Currently on board the train, we do not have any masking requirements for our guests. Guests, if they do want to wear a mask for comfort or preference, they're welcome to, but there currently is no policy in place, at least for our US route.
Okay, great. And Jody and Taylor, what about in Utah? Is there anything special you want to call out?
No, in Utah, the mask mandates have been lifted pretty much everywhere. So, it's your own personal choice whether you wear a mask or not.
Okay, great. On the train, do you offer virgin cocktails or mocktails and non-alcoholic wine?
Tracy, maybe you'd be best suited to answer that question.
Yes, we do actually offer virgin mocktails. They are available for all of our guests. I don't believe we currently offer non-alcoholic wine, but if we do have ample time to put in a request to our onboard team, we can look at arranging that for our guests. We do not offer non-alcoholic beer on our US route at this time, but if that is a preference for one of our guests, you can just let your VVR rep know and they can communicate that to our vacation consultants and we can add that special request on. And our local destinations team will do their best to be able to have that on board for our guests.
Thank you, Tracy. For Rocky Mountaineer, how fast is the train traveling when going through the sites? Or just, I guess in general, how fast is the train traveling?
I can answer that question, Lynn. It's a great question. We try to make it so that our guests experience the scenery at a leisurely pace. So the average speed's typically about 35 miles per hour. And I say average because in some areas there might straightaway areas that might not be quite as scenic and we might go a little faster. In some areas where it's just very windy and steep, or the scenery is just so dramatic that we want to kind of slow down the train so you can take photos and just be immersed in the scenery. But we try to go at that nice leisurely pace so our guests can really enjoy the views.
Great. For our Utah friends, what is the guarantee of dark skies having clear weather?
I think that the biggest thing for dark skies in Utah is clouds and the moon phase. So you want to look at when there's a new moon, and that will increase your likelihood of getting those really, really stunning dark sky photos. They can be fleeting sometimes on trips. I've taken people to southern Utah and, you know, we've had cloudy weather, but as with anything, we can't control what happens right above us sometimes. So a new moon is usually what I look for when I plan my dark sky trips.
All right, great. What is a slot canyon?
The slot canyon is a part of a canyon. You know, think of the opposite of the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is very wide. The river has carved a very large cavern into the earth. A slot canyon is where the water has carved a very narrow path in the earth. So oftentimes a slot canyon can shrink to about shoulder width or even less. So that's kind of this really intimate experience with the rock where you're right there, you can touch it, you can see it. It's really like it's hugging you.
You're not going to get stuck in them, are you?
No, not slot canyons that we are highlighting. Absolutely not.
I think after Jody's description of cinnamon rolls and love muffins, you might want to take a canyon walk before you go to those cafes and enjoy those fine pastries.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So still staying on Utah excursions, how long are excursions to the national parks typically?
It depends on what you want to do. For you know, something like the Rocky Mountaineer, if you're staying within Moab, like if you're overnighting in Moab, you can hit both Canyonlands and Arches National Park in one day. You know, I would you schedule a half day in Arches National Park. You want to go to those iconic spots. But the sky's the limit. If you're going from Moab to other parts of the state, the drive times can get fairly long. You know, from Moab to the Zion National Park area can be 4.5 to 5 hours. So you want to plan that. You want to keep people in the loop and keep people informed with regards to drive times if they're going away from the, you know, Moab, Canyonlands, and Arches areas.
Okay, great. Going back to the train, is there smoking on the train?
No, we don't allow any smoking on board. And our hosts do have access to the Nicorette gum for those who would like one if they didn't bring that along. But for safety reasons and for the sake of our guests' enjoyment, we don't allow any smoking on board the train or in the little platform. There is on the back of each rail car a little viewing platform. It's a small area where you can actually, there's an open window, you can go out and take photos out there. But even with that, we don't, especially for safety reasons, do not allow smoking on board.
And we have another question here. How about vaping?
I think I'll ask my colleague Tracy to answer that question.
Great question. Yes, the same policy applies for vaping as well. We do not allow vaping on board the train, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on how you look at it, but no smoking or vaping is permitted on board.
Okay, great. This is a multi-part question. Do you offer these trips in July and August? I believe your answer is yes.
Yes.
Correct. And transportation to and from Denver to Las Vegas airports, are they is there a shuttle or transfers included?
Yes, there are. Tracy, may you want to elaborate on the different options? I could answer it, but you might be a little more eloquent than I am with the transportation
Sure.
details.
Do you mind repeating the question? Was it from Denver to Las Vegas, or
In Denver and Las Vegas, like airport transfers.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So in Denver, unfortunately, we do not provide any transfers to or from the airport, if that's what we are wondering about, nor do we provide that in Las Vegas. We're not set up with those partners yet. we can, your VBR reps can provide assistance with booking that as separate items to enhance your journey, but we don't offer those services, unfortunately. We are partnered with, as Michael mentioned, we are partnered with Red Tail Air, and they have a beautiful flight seeing option that can be done from Las Vegas up to Moab if guests prefer to add that onto their journey. Alternatively, they can also use the Red Tail Air flight from Moab up to Salt Lake City as well, which is another beautiful option to see more of the state.
Okay, great. And then the third part of this question is this trip appropriate for teenagers or is it more for adults?
I'll add one more thing to the previous question. In Denver, there's a great light rail service that goes directly to and from the Denver airport and into Union Station area, where most of our hotels are located within walking distance. So that's another additional option that you have in Denver. As far as the question about teenagers, I think it really depends on the interest level and engagement as far as that specific teenager. Those who have teenagers or have had teenagers can certainly attest to the fact that things can change. So, you know, I think they have to be interested in the experience, and you need to just describe what it's going to be like. And, you know, I know my teenager 3 years ago was interested in being on the train, and this year, not so much. So, but I think our hosts try to engage every guest on board the train, try to make the experience unique for everybody as best they can. And certainly the off-train experiences. So when you get to Moab and you got those Jeep rides planned or river rafting through Moab Adventure Center, you're certainly going to pique the interest of a teenager, hopefully with one of those experiences.
Great.
Hi, this is Jody from Utah. I'm going to hop in on the Rocky Mountaineer discussion because fortunately I got to experience Rocky Mountaineer a few months ago in April. And one thing to note about the train ride is there is no internet access. And I believe that's by design. So if you do bring teenagers on this trip, they won't be able to, you know, access the internet. So just a little thing to be prepared for before you get on the train.
That's a really good point, Jody.
It is by design. Thank you, Jody. I just add to that comment. We want our guests engaged with the storytelling from our hosts, and we want them engaged in the scenery and the experience of socializing with other guests on board the train. So we tell people, you know, take all the photos you want with your iPad or your iPhone or whatever device you have, and then when you get to the hotel, we'll have Wi-Fi available for you to post those great social media images.
Michael, can you or Tracy talk a little bit about transportation from hotels to the starting point of the trip? Uber is probably the best way to go, correct?
Tracy, do you want to take that question?
Uber or taxi?
Sure. Just to clarify, are you talking about getting from a hotel to the rail platform, or
Yes,
are you able to? Yeah, that's a great question. So for all of our rail journeys, we actually include coach transfer from the guest hotel or some of our guest centers in town. Just due to the nature of the location in Moab, we do have to provide a coach transfer for everybody to get there. So for guests that are staying at Rocky Mountaineer's partner hotels, we will include a complimentary pickup from their hotel to the station or vice versa. For our guests who are not booking at our partner hotels, we do offer the transfer in Moab from the Moab Adventure Center. It's centrally located right in the heart of Moab. It's an easy location to get to, and we'll take that coach transfer from that location to or from the siding. As well, in Denver, we offer the complimentary motor coach transfers from our partner hotels to the siding, which is located in the Rhino district of Denver. So it's about a 10-minute drive from Union Station. And those are included for all of our rail guests.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're over our time, but I think we still have a couple more questions that are great, that are worth asking live here. So for Utah, if I don't hike, will I still enjoy these national parks?
Absolutely. It's for everybody. There are so many different things that you can do. You know, places like Dead Horse Point State Park and, you know, areas of Arches National Park and everywhere. You can drive up, you can stop, take a look, hike as much as you want, get back in your car, kind of that road trip, scenic byway sort of feel. Utah has lots of that. There's something for everyone. I wouldn't encourage people who don't hike to plan hiking Angel's Landing, you know. You want to be able to get the activities that you feel like you want to do and that you're safe doing, but there's plenty of opportunity for lots of different experiences.
Great. And one last question. Do I need to pre-book excursions or can I make decisions on the day I arrive in Moab?
Tracy, would
Well,
you
if you
like?
want to go into Arches, you can't get the, you know, you can't just go into Arches National Park. You do have to reserve either in, you know, advance like Jody was talking about or the day before. There's oftentimes openings, but you know, if you're in Moab in late May, early June, and you're trying to plan an excursion the day before or the day of, that they're going to be pretty booked out. It'll be difficult to do. So we always encourage that people plan ahead. Utah's pretty wild. The excursions are incredibly popular. People love visiting here, so it's good to kind of plan in advance. But, you know, the wonderful thing about these natural areas is you can just take a drive down a road and see one of the most beautiful sceneries that you've ever seen. So there's plenty you can do here on a limb, but, you know, an adventure you probably want to plan ahead on.
Right.
I'll agree with Taylor on that for sure. It's, you know, Moab, the national parks in general, but Utah and Moab is super popular right now. And the further you plan, the better off you'll be. And if you leave a little bit of free time for spontaneity in your excursions, that's fine. But certainly make sure you book ahead the things you definitely know you want to do.
Wonderful. We do have several more questions remaining, but we have run out of time. So these will be answered from a rail specialist or a Vacations by Rail representative very shortly once this session is concluded. But I did want to say thank you all for attending, and I will turn this over to Tracy and Michael and Jody and Taylor for their final goodbyes.
Jody, I'll let you say goodbye first.
Thank you so much for attending this webinar. This has been so fun learning more about Rocky Mountaineer and just sharing all of the wonderful things across Utah with you. So thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It was great to be here and I learned a lot too.
And thank you all for attending and showing interest and asking lots of great questions. You're in great hands with the team at Vacations by Rail in terms of planning your package to Utah with Rocky Mountaineer. And we look forward to seeing you on the trains in the near future.
All right. Thanks so much for attending. Everyone have a great day. Bye.